Okay, let me ask you a question. What if I told you that nearly 100 years ago, one brilliant inventor claimed he had found a cure for everything? And I mean everything, including cancer. This is the absolutely wild story of Royal Raymond Rife, a man whose work, some say, wasn't just lost to history. It was deliberately erased. Just let that sink in for a second. Millions of lives. A technology that could have changed the world as we know it. It makes you wonder, right? How did this one guy get so close to something so revolutionary? And maybe the bigger question is, why have most of us never, ever heard his name? Well, let's get into it. So our story starts with this guy, Royal Rife. He's a brilliant researcher at the beginning of the 20th century, and he is driven by this single, incredibly bold mission: to wipe out all disease. Not just manage it, not just treat it, but end it. And look, Rife wasn't just some tinkerer in his garage. This guy had a world-class resume. He studied at top-tier universities like Johns Hopkins and even went all the way to Germany to learn from the absolute master of optics, Carl Zeiss himself. His talent was so obvious that a wealthy benefactor, Timken, basically handed him a blank check, millions of dollars in today's money, to build the ultimate dream laboratory in San Diego. And it was in this lab that he would build something that defied the known laws of science. Inside this incredible lab, Rife created his masterpiece. He called it the universal microscope. Now, you gotta understand, this wasn't just a slightly more powerful microscope. No. Rife claimed his invention could do something that scientists, even today, will tell you is impossible for a light microscope. He could see a living virus. So how on earth did he do it? He called the technique heterodyning light. The simple explanation is that he figured out how to combine different frequencies of light in a way that would make these tiny, invisible microbes and viruses literally glow. And here's the kicker. Each one would light up in its own unique signature color. It's like he was color-coding diseases. And listen, this wasn't just Rife bragging about his own work. This was so groundbreaking that in 1944, the Smithsonian Institute, that Smithsonian, went on record saying he was transcending and breaking all of the laws of optics. That is a massive statement from a major institution. But you know what? Seeing the enemy was only step one. For Rife, just seeing these little monsters wasn't the end game, not even close. He wanted to destroy them. And this led him to his most radical idea yet. What if every disease, every pathogen, had a unique frequency? Kind of like how a crystal glass has a specific note that can shatter it. What if you could just find that frequency and poof? The method he came up with was, at least in theory, unbelievably elegant. Step 1. Observe the pathogen with his microscope, identifying it by its unique color. Step 2. Identify its mortal frequency. Step 3. Use a special plasma ray tube to transmit that exact frequency. And Step 4. Destroy. The pathogen would be devitalized, while every single healthy cell around it would be left completely unharmed. A totally non-invasive, perfectly targeted cure. And the list of diseases he claimed he could treat was just staggering. We're talking over 60 different illnesses. Everything from common stuff like streptococcus, all the way up to the big ones, the diseases people feared most, like tuberculosis, and yes, even cancer. Okay, and this is where the story goes from incredible to unbelievable. In 1934, a special research committee from the University of Southern California decided it was time to put Rife's claims to the ultimate test, a human clinical trial. They gathered 16 patients with terminal cancer at the Scripps Clinic. These weren't just sick people. These were people the medical establishment had given up on. They were considered hopeless cases. So for 3 months, they treated these patients, beaming specific frequencies at them for just a few minutes every couple of days. The result that the committee of doctors reported? 100%. A 100% recovery rate. All 16 terminal patients were declared cancer-free. A 100% cure rate for terminal cancer. I mean, that should have been front-page news across the entire planet. That's a Nobel Prize right there. But that's not what happened. Instead of a celebration, this unbelievable breakthrough was supposedly met with a brutal, coordinated campaign to make sure it was buried and forgotten. I mean, the contrast is just jarring. On one side, you have respected doctors calling this technology the end of all disease. But on the other, you have the medical establishment suddenly branding Rife a fraud, a quack. The very man who had just demonstrated this perfect cure rate was now up against a wall of resistance. So you have to ask, who was behind this? The story that's been passed down points a finger directly at one group, the American Medical Association, the AMA. And the motive? Well, it was supposedly pretty simple. An inexpensive, non-invasive cure for cancer and dozens of other diseases, well, that posed a massive threat to a medical industry that was already becoming a multi-trillion-dollar business. And the pushback was relentless. It wasn't just talk. First, a huge, costly lawsuit from the AMA that bankrupted Rife's company. Then, someone broke into his lab, vandalized it, and burned his precious research records. Another lab over in New Jersey that was trying to validate his work, it also mysteriously burned to the ground. And then, maybe the final nail in the coffin, his biggest supporter, Dr. Milbank Johnson, died under very suspicious circumstances, right before he was about to hold a press conference to announce the incredible results of that 1934 trial. Now, you'd think that would be the end of it. Story over. But even with all that opposition, Rife's ideas didn't just vanish. They went underground. And if you know where to look, you can still find the echoes of his work today, like a little glimpse into a future that might have been. If you search around today, you'll find things called Rife machines being used in alternative wellness centers. They're used for everything from pain management to general wellness. Now, they're very careful not to make any official medical claims, but all of them trace their roots directly back to Rife's pioneering work in what's now called electromedicine. But as for Rife himself, well, his story doesn't have a happy ending. He never recovered. The endless legal battles, the destruction of his life's work, the public smear campaign, it all took its toll. He spent his last years completely broke, battling alcoholism. He died in 1971, and right up to the very end, he insisted that his cure was real and that powerful people had deliberately buried it. And that's where we're left, with this huge, lingering question. Was Royal Rife a genius who found the cure for humanity's greatest plagues, only to be crushed by an industry protecting its profits? Or was he just a charismatic charlatan whose incredible claims simply fell apart under scrutiny? With all the records gone, the truth is, we may never know for sure. It just remains one of history's most fascinating and forbidden medical stories.